Hi, everybody, and thanks for joining today. We're going to give it just a few more minutes and allow people to get into the Zoom room, and we're really excited to hear about the DoD peer-reviewed medical research program. So we're right at the top of the hour. We're going to get started very shortly. I just wanted to take a minute and thank everybody for joining today. My name is Chelsea Fix. I'm with the GBS-CIDP Foundation International. As part of our mission of support, education, research, and advocacy for the GBS-CIDP, MMN, and variants community, we're really happy to have Dr. Catherine Argue here today to talk about the peer-reviewed medical research program under the Department of Defense. With that, Catherine, I'm happy to hand it over to you to talk more about the program.
All right, thank you so much. Go ahead.
Before you get started, actually, I'm so sorry. If you have any questions, please type them into the Q&A box at the bottom, not the chat box. The Q&A box is much more effective for this. Apologies for jumping in, Dr. Argue, and whenever you're ready, take it away.
No problem. I'm glad you mentioned about the Q&A box. So I'll be keeping an eye on that while I talk and try to kind of address questions as we go. There'll also be a little bit of time left over for questions at the end. I don't plan on using the full hour. So thank you everyone for dialing in today, and thank you to the GBS-CIDP Foundation for giving us this opportunity to engage with researchers for Guillain-Barré and syndrome. So let me just jump right into the slide deck. This is showing a little bit of an outline of what I will cover today. We'll start by just giving a little bit of an overview of the Congressionally Directed Medical Research Programs, or CDMRP, and talk about the program cycle and review processes that are common across all of our programs. We'll then get into the specifics of the peer-reviewed medical research program, which has Guillain-Barré syndrome as a topic area for 2023. We'll talk about the funding opportunities that we have this year and how to apply for them, as well as providing you with where you can find additional resources and just some strategies for success on any potential applications that you might submit to us. This slide shows the overall vision and mission of CDMRP. Our vision is to transform healthcare through innovative and impactful research, and that's really accomplished through our mission of responsibly managing collaborative research that discovers, develops, and delivers healthcare solutions for service members, veterans, and the American public. The CDMRP was started by Congress in 1992, and that was really in response to grassroots lobbying efforts by individuals interested in obtaining better federal funding for breast cancer. And so out of their lobbying efforts, Congress started CDMRP with the first program of CDMRP, which was the breast cancer research program. And since this was put under the Department of Defense to manage, and there wasn't a longstanding history with the Department of Defense managing this type of research, CDMRP engaged the National Academy of Science to recommend some steps in how the programs would be managed. And the process that was put in place then is still the process that is used today. So I'll talk a little bit more in detail about that, but that is, the how here. That's our two-tier review process that involves scientists, clinicians, and consumers throughout the entire review process. The other important thing that I want to point out on this slide is the where, and that is research conducted in institutions around the world. Unlike some other federal funding agencies, the CDMRP is allowed to fund outside of the United States. So we can fund pretty much anybody. That can be within the United States, outside of the United States. It can be nonprofits such as hospitals or universities, and we can also fund for-profits, industry organizations. These are just a few more hallmarks of CDMRP. I already mentioned a few of these on the previous slide. Importantly, that we follow the National Academy of Medicine recommended model for application review. That's our two-tier review process. I also mentioned consumer participation, and I'll talk a little bit more detail about the consumer participation in a few slides so you know exactly what their involvement looks like. The other thing that I want to mention out on this slide that's important is that if you do obtain an award through CDMRP, there are some differences from how our awards are managed to that of other funding organizations that are important to know. And one is that the full award amount is funded upfront, not just the first year. So you do have access to the full award budget for the entire period of performance, which means that if research is moving a little bit slower than originally anticipated, it's easy to carry funds over into the next year. And if research is moving a little bit faster, or if there's a change in plans where just an experiment that you were initially going to do during year 3, you instead want to do during year 1, you have the ability to have access to the funds to allow you to do that. There's no continuation of funding. So after our awards conclude, in order to receive additional funding, it has to be recompeted. And we also have no pay line. This is part of our 2-tier review process, is that it's not just a strict cutoff of a pay line based off of the scientific merit. Instead, we're also considering other things along with the scientific merit, such as portfolio composition, relative impact, and also adherence to the award mechanism that is chosen. This slide is showing the full list of the 35 programs that are under the CDMRP for the fiscal year 2023. And I'm showing this full list here. If there's any aside from the peer-reviewed medical research program that you're interested in, I do encourage you to visit the website and take a look at any other programs that sound like they might be of interest. I'll be focusing on the remainder of the talk pretty much specifically on the peer-reviewed medical research program. As you can see here, has 50 topic areas included within the program, and our appropriation, our budget for 2023 is $370 million. So this is going through the program cycle and review process that was recommended through the National Academy of Medicine, and this is common to all of the CDMRP programs. This slide shows the program cycle, kind of what it looks like. So every year, our cycle starts with a vision setting meeting, and this occurs right after our budget is received on the Department of Defense spending bill. And that allows us to set the strategy for the upcoming year. And based off of the strategy, we release funding opportunities that will help us meet our strategic goals for the year. All of our applications require some sort of a pre-application. This is important because we do not have standing peer review panels. So pre-applications, even though in some cases it's just a, kind of formality of a letter of intent where there's no formal invitation process or anything like that, it does give us a heads up on what types of research to expect to come in for that year so that we can generate peer review panels with the appropriate expertise to evaluate the proposals that we will be receiving. However, some of our award mechanisms do require an invitation to submit, and so those pre-applications would be screened, and the invitation to submit would be sent out to those on which we're interested in seeing a full application. So then the full applications come in, and followed in that, we have peer review, the first tier of our two-tiered process. And then the second tier is programmatic review. And I'll be talking about all of these things in more detail as they pertain specifically to the award mechanisms offered under the PRMRP. After that, you have the funding recommendations, and then you get into the period of performance of the award, and the whole cycle will start over the following year. So the goal of the two-tier review process is really to balance the most meritorious science with fulfilling programmatic goals. And so we have this partnership between peer review and programmatic review. First, a little bit more detail about the peer review process. As I just mentioned, we do not have standing peer review panels. Instead, our peer review panels are newly generated on an annual basis to fit the types of applications that we're receiving and to make sure that there's appropriate expertise on the panel to review what we have coming in for that specific year. The panel is comprised of both scientific and consumer reviewers. So we do have consumers. These are patients or caregivers for patients, or in some cases, clinicians. It's somebody who is going to speak to the patient perspective on the panel. The consumer reviewers are full voting members of the panel, so they will be contributing to the overall score. However, you'll mostly see their input is on the summary statements that you received, letting you know what your peer review score was and what the comments were that underlie that score. You will see the consumer comments reflected most strongly under impact. So one of the things that sets CDMRP apart is this patient consumer involvement. And we really want to make sure that we're funding not only good science, but good science that's going to make a meaningful difference in patients' lives. So we ask patients to speak to how they perceive the impact of what is being proposed. The other thing that I want to mention is that since there's no standing panels, we don't really post lists until after the year has concluded, but you can get an idea of what our panels look like by seeing who was invited for the previous years. And again, the applicants will receive a summary statement as the outcome after the peer review stage. Following peer review, the applications that score within a solid scientific range within peer review, they then progress to programmatic review. And during programmatic review, the panel is going to really take the proposals that were evaluated during peer review and do more of a direct comparison of one proposal to the next. So during peer review, proposals are not directly compared to one another. Instead, they're held up against kind of an idealized application and given more of an absolute score. So it's here during programmatic review that the actual comparison-based review is happening. And they rely heavily on the comments within the peer review summary statement. So they're taking a look at all of the strengths and weaknesses that were pointed out during peer review and holding those against one another to kind of come up with their final recommendation for funding list. They're also looking at more carefully than peer review at adherence to the intent of the award mechanism. They're looking at relative innovation and impact. And then they're also considering program goals and portfolio composition. So there's no pay line. They're looking for creating a balanced portfolio. So between there being no direct comparison during peer review and no pay line, sometimes your peer review scores are not the best marker to indicate whether or not you are likely to get funded. We can, in theory, have a ton of proposals. Everything for a given topic area, for example, could score within the excellent range, and then it would be further narrowed down during programmatic review. Again, we do have consumer reviewers that participate as full voting members on the programmatic review panel. We do have a standing programmatic review panel. You can take a look at who is on the current 2023 programmatic review panel on our website. And since our topic areas do change a bit from year to year for the peer-reviewed medical program, and I'll get into more details on that in a few slides, we do also include ad hoc reviewers to fill in any missing areas of expertise. The outcome from programmatic review will be the letters that let you know whether or not you've been recommended to receive funding. This is just really highlighting that consumer involvement that I mentioned on the previous two slides, where consumers participate as full voting members during both peer and programmatic review. And we also engage consumers early on in the life cycle that I showed a few slides back during the vision setting to find out what their needs are for that year so that we can make sure that we're releasing program announcements with mechanisms that speak to the patient needs. So we try and involve them as much as possible throughout the entire cycle. Now we'll get into the specifics about the peer-reviewed medical research program. So this program was first initiated in 1999 to address diseases and conditions with relevance to military health. So, and you can see our vision and our mission here. Every year from Congress with our annual appropriation, which I mentioned a few slides back, was $370 million, we receive a list of topic areas. So our direction from Congress, our congressional language, is to support research of clear scientific merit and direct relevance to military health in specified topic areas. And since this is put in as the congressional language on the Department of Defense spending bill, it has been signed into law that we can only fund under the specified topic areas for that year. We are not allowed to fund anything outside of that list. This year is showing the list of topic areas that we received from Congress for 2023. And I'm highlighting in blue the topic areas that are brand new for 23 that had never before been offered under this program, as well as those that are returning for this year, which means that they were offered under the program for a period of time, then fell off for a year or more, and are now what we refer to as returning topic areas. And the reason for highlighting these in different colors is really just to show you the variability in the topic areas for the program. So this was a year in which we received a little bit higher than usual of new topic areas, but there always is some degree of change from one year to the next. And this is just a result of the topic areas being assigned by Congress based on congressional interests and lobbying efforts. Due to the variability in our topic areas from year to year, in order to set a strategy for the program and to come up with kind of a management scheme for the program, we organize topic areas into portfolio buckets based on common areas of research or common physiological systems. And we really do this through engagement with consumers when we receive our topic areas for that year, and we're reaching out to find out what their needs are for the year. We can group topic areas together that kind of have commonalities in their needs. And so when you go to apply to one of our funding opportunities, you will select the topic area that you're interested in, and that will dictate the portfolio that you will choose. You will notice that there are a few topic areas. One example is proteomics, which is more of a research tool rather than a specific disease or condition. And that kind of situation, it will be split across multiple portfolios. There's also some portfolios such as neuroinflammatory responses to emerging viral diseases, which lends itself to several portfolios. And so that again is split across 3 different portfolios. So I encourage you to take a look, carefully at all of the topic areas and all of the topic areas to find the best one to fit your research proposal. So as I mentioned, for all of our applications, you must address one topic area and you will be choosing a portfolio. Those portfolios come with a list of portfolio-specific strategic goals. So you must select one strategic goal that you're going to be addressing. And that is the goals are the criteria that the programmatic panel is really considering when we talk about meeting programmatic goals, and also portfolio balance, making sure we have a good spread across the various different goals for a given portfolio. This slide is also showing the 6 funding opportunities that we released for this year. We have award mechanisms that span all the way from basic discovery research all the way up through and including clinical trials. And I'll go through a little bit more detail of those on the next couple of slides. So our Discovery Award is our smallest award mechanism. It's a direct cost maximum of $200,000. This award mechanism is really meant to support a new line of research. So something that is highly innovative and that, if successful, would have high impact for the patient and the research field, and something that would really be taking the field in a new direction. So something that is highly innovative. For the peer review criteria, innovation is actually stacked higher than research strategy and feasibility. So we're really looking at a high risk, high reward award mechanism here. And due to that, there is a low burden for having any preliminary data. We just ask for strong rationale based on the literature or whatever else you might have. Moving up from there, we have the Investigator-Initiated Research Award. This is an award to support basic through translational research, anything that requires, final development and hypothesis testing. So this award mechanism looks a little bit similar to something like the NIH R01 mechanism. But what really sets it apart from something like that is that impact criteria, where we want to make sure that we're not just funding good hypothesis-driven science, but that it's good hypothesis-driven science that is going to lead to a meaningful difference in patient lives. So we want something that is looking at an eye towards translation, even if it's not quite at that translational stage quite yet. So if you are at the translational stage, we then have the Technology or Therapeutic Development Award mechanism, which is the 3rd one shown on this slide. This award mechanism is to support products. These can be tangible products such as drugs or devices, or it can be something like a knowledge product, like clinical guidance. And the idea with this award mechanism is it's supposed to bridge the gap between basic bench research to a first-in-human study. We have two funding tiers with this award mechanism. If you're applying to the funding level 2, the direct cost maximum is $4 million. And the immediate next step at the conclusion of the funding level 2 should be a first-in-human study. If you don't think you'll be quite there for a first-in-human study once this award concludes, then the funding level 1 might be more appropriate. That's for products that are a little bit more at that earlier stage of translation. Something that is in common to all three of these award mechanisms is that clinical trials are not allowed under these. You can use these to support clinical research, something that's using human subjects. However, once it gets into something that is using an intervention and testing that in human subjects, that meets our definition of a clinical trial, and it would not be allowed under these. Also, similarly, across all of these is the pre-application process. It's just a letter of intent. There's no invitation needed to submit to the full application. So on this slide, I'm showing the last 3 of our award mechanisms for this year. What these 3 all have in common is that they do allow for clinical trials to be included within them. So first we have the Focus Program Award. This is a team science award. And while it allows clinical trials are not required. So this is a team science award where you're going to be taking a minimum of 4 projects, but it can be more than 4, that are all working together to address an overarching goal or challenge within the field. And so the idea here is that the individual projects can be any combination of basic bench research up through and including clinical trials. And while the project should be capable of standing alone on their own merit, they should be coming together to accomplish more together than what they would be able to accomplish if they were all funded individually. Next, we have the Clinical Trial Award Mechanism. This award mechanism does require that you are speaking to a clinical trial, and it does not allow the inclusion of preclinical animal research. So we have 2 options for a clinical trial award mechanism. One is just the full clinical trial option, and that's for individuals who are ready to hit the ground running and start recruitment pretty much for their clinical trial right away. We have noticed that a lot of investigators still need a little bit of time before they can really start the trial to get final regulatory approvals in place or get their study team set up, get sites on board. So in that case, we have the clinical trial with planning phase option. Most commonly, this planning phase is used to finalize an IND or an IDE submission to the FDA, but it can be used for any other clinical trial planning activities. It just cannot be used to conduct animal research. And so if you apply to this funding mechanism, the direct cost maximum for the clinical trial itself, there is not one. However, for the planning phase, we do have a direct cost maximum there for $500,000. To deal with an award mechanism where there's no direct cost maximum, we do make the reasonableness of the budget a scored peer review criteria, whereas for all of our other award mechanisms, and kind of more similar to what other funding agencies do, is that budget is usually not a scored criteria, but is instead just something that is weighing into that overall score that the applicant receives. Lastly, we have the Lifestyle and Behavioral Health Interventions Award Mechanism. This is a brand new award mechanism for this year. And similar to the Focus Program Award, it can be for a clinical trial, but it does not have to be. The key thing here is that it cannot support animal research. So it has to be some type of a human-based study. It can be something like a retrospective study, or it can be an interventional clinical trial for something that is not a pharmacological or an invasive device. So what we're really looking for here is things like quality of life intervention, something like nutritional guidelines, exercise recommendations, or other lifestyle-based interventions, things like that. And then also epidemiological studies, that type of thing. So for the first two award mechanisms that I mentioned, the focus program and clinical trial award, since those are very high dollar value award mechanisms and those applications are quite burdensome to put in, we do have a formal pre-proposal submission where for your pre-application type, it will be a pre-proposal that is screened, and it is screened by the members of our programmatic panel. And those for which they're interested in seeing a full application, they will send out a letter of invitation to submit the full application. So unless you see that letter inviting you to submit the full application, it is not allowed. For the Lifestyle and Behavioral Health Interventions Award, that one is then again back to just the letter of intent where you do not need to wait for an invitation to submit the full application. I do want to mention that there is obviously a little bit of overlap between the lifestyle and behavioral health interventions and the clinical trial award mechanism. And one distinction is that the clinical trial award mechanism doesn't have a direct cost maximum, and it does allow those invasive and pharmacological type interventions that are not allowed under the lifestyle and behavioral health award mechanism. If you are doing a lifestyle type intervention, something that would kind of fit under either of these mechanisms, really you can use the budget to help you determine which is the better fit. So, if it's something that's a little bit smaller and fits within the direct cost maximum for the lifestyle and behavioral health interventions one, it's appropriate there. But if you are doing a really large scale clinical trial, you can also consider the clinical trial award mechanism where you would be allowed a little bit of a larger budget. So I already mentioned that all of our award mechanisms require that you address a peer-reviewed medical research program topic area, and then that dictates what portfolio you're under, and you have to choose a portfolio-specific strategic goal. The other thing that is common to all of our applications is that we require a military health statement, and that's based off of our congressional language asking for military relevance. So the definition of military relevance that is being used in this context is one that is a little bit broader than just the active duty service members. So of course it does include active duty service members, but it is also including veterans, military beneficiaries, and or the American public. So depending on what topic area you're addressing and what population you're looking at and the specific field that you're addressing with your particular application, we do have some suggestions in the program announcement for how you might speak to military relevance in different situations. So it's kind of obvious if you're addressing the healthcare needs of active duty service members or veterans, but we do also have the ask that you consider the military relevance when you're speaking about family members or the military beneficiaries, and also how the healthcare needs of the American public can affect something like military readiness. So that military or mission readiness is kind of a key term that, allows you to kind of broaden your statement and talk about something that might pertain a little less directly to the active duty service member. So I mentioned those portfolio-specific strategic goals. Since I'm talking to the GBS-CIDP Foundation here, I'm showing as an example the strategic goals for the autoimmune disorders portfolio. We have specific strategic goals, as each of these bullet points says, that fall under the continuum of care. So there's some under foundational studies and diagnosis, and then on the next slide under treatment and epidemiology. And the idea here is that these are meant to be a little bit of a mix and match approach, where one strategic goal should be applicable to several topic areas within the portfolio. And similarly, the topic areas within the portfolios that each have strategic goals. And then I'm also showing the strategic goals for the neuroscience portfolio, since peripheral neuropathy is also of interest to this group. Of course, there might be other portfolios that are of interest. All of the strategic goals for all of our portfolios are in the program announcements. These are just to show you an example and have the most likely ones that I thought would be useful to this group, easy to access. So this is just a little bit of a reminder of some key things about our peer review process. I took quite a bit of time going through the intent of our award mechanisms. And so I just want to encourage you to really carefully look at the specific peer review criteria for the specific award mechanisms. Since all of our award mechanisms have different intents, they all have different peer review criteria, and they are all listed in decreasing order of importance, and that order might vary from one mechanism to the next. As I mentioned, for the discovery award mechanism, that's that smaller high risk, high reward mechanism, you're going to see innovation at the top of the list over and above research strategy and feasibility. And then, something like our clinical trial award mechanism, you're going to see things more specific to the intervention, things like that. For the team science focused program award, you'll have things speaking to the team cohesiveness, things like that. So I really encourage you to take a careful look at those specific criteria for the mechanism you are applying to. Unlike the peer review criteria, the programmatic review criteria is a little bit more similar from one mechanism to the next. It's also important, though, to keep these things in mind, though. As I mentioned, we do not have a strict cutoff just based on off of that peer review score. So these programmatic review criteria are really going to weigh equally with the peer reviewed criteria. And so you want to make sure that you're really speaking to each of these, and that the programmatic panel is going to have an easy job of, saying how you addressed each of the criteria that they're looking at when they are weighing the merit of your proposal. All right, this is just showing a quick, easy reference slide highlighting all of our award mechanisms, pointing out those that require a letter of intent versus those that require a pre-proposal where an invitation is required to submit, along with the application deadlines for all of those. Now we'll just conclude with some additional tips, resources, and strategies for success. So most of this is just a summary of things that I already addressed on the previous slide, but just to really highlight, I encourage you to read the entire program announcement very carefully. I am well aware that our program announcements are very long and very dense. There is a wealth of information in that program announcement, and it's kind of, sometimes scattered throughout different sections where you need to have read the entire thing to have a really ideal understanding of what the intent is of that award mechanism and what we're asking for. So the other importance of reading the entire program announcement is that due to our acquisition regulations, we cannot work one-on-one with a specific applicant to help them develop their proposal. It's something that's seen as given a competitive advantage to one person, so we're not allowed to do that. So we try to be really, really descriptive in our program announcements and give all of the guidance that we would be giving to you on a one-on-one basis if we were allowed to have that engagement. So any questions that you might have on what we're looking for that award mechanism should be included within the text of the program announcement. So make sure you give it a careful read and don't, just kind of, read the first couple of sentences, think you got it, and, then move on. It's important to read the entire thing. Just a few other things to make sure you're checking off is one, relevance. You want to be able to speak to the topic area, the program specific goals, and also the military relevance. So relevance comes into play in several different areas within your application. And then also impact. As I mentioned, impact is something that really sets us apart from other funding organizations. You want to be keeping in mind to the consumer reviewers that will be sitting on the panels and making sure you're letting them know how what you're proposing will be impactful for them. One of the documents that they use most heavily for their reviews on the consumer side of things is the lay abstract. So make sure you pay careful attention to that. Don't just duplicate what you have in the technical abstract. Make sure you write a really strong lay abstract. We suggest that you have a friend or a family member, someone outside the scientific or medical field, take a look at that lay abstract and make sure they can understand what you're trying to do. And that should help with getting your point across to the consumer reviewers. You also should be able to speak to having something that has a clear rationale, yet is also innovative, something that's a little bit different and will be bringing something new to the field. And similar to a lot of grant applications that you put in, feasibility is also important to always speak to of how you can de-risk it. Show us that you will be able to do what you're proposing to do. I want to also emphasize good planning and timelines. We are really, really strict about our application deadlines. We have to be, so we're not allowed to offer extensions on an individual basis on any of the application deadlines. If it says 5 p.m. Eastern time and you submit at 5:01 Eastern time, unfortunately, it will not be accepted. It will be a non-compliant application. The only situation under which we offer extensions to the deadlines is if there's some sort of natural disaster or something like that, where an entire area or, a given university, the entire organization is without power or something like that. So otherwise, we do not give any extensions to the deadlines on an individual basis. And so make sure you're planning in advance for any sort of technical delays. Might take a little bit longer than you were anticipating for documents to upload, that kind of thing. So you don't want to be down to the wire and risk missing that deadline. And lastly, grantsmanship, it's always important. Just here as a little bit of reminder to make sure that you're going to be speaking not just to a peer review panel, but also to consumer reviewers and a programmatic panel that might have a little bit of broader scientific and medical expertise than the peer review panel. So you want to be unburdened by jargon, that kind of thing. Make sure that your application can be well understood by a variety of fields. Now we're getting into where you can find a little bit more information, and the first is the CDMRP website. As I had already mentioned, you can find information about some of the other CDMRP programs which might be of interest to you, as well as some additional information that I didn't have time to cover today about the peer-reviewed medical research program. Also, aside from our program pages, you can take a look at research and consumer highlights that we publish. These show you consumers and their perspective on what it was like being involved in our review process, and also highlights on some of the awards we're funded. You can search the entire list of awards that we have funded to see, maybe what we have funded under the award mechanism you're interested in the past. Take a look at what we already have funded for a given topic area, things like that. And then we also have a webinar series. The other thing I want to mention is how to sign up for email notifications. It's a little bit late. Our program announcements for 2023 have already gone out, but if you take this as a reminder to make sure you sign up now, you'll be one of the first notified when we release new announcements for 2024. So you can do this either through the CDMRP website or through our electronic biomedical research application portal. When you click the link to subscribe for email notifications, you get to select the specific programs that you're interested in. So you won't be swamped with receiving a bunch of email blasts from all of CDMRP. You'll only receive those relevant to the programs that you have chosen. And then this is just highlighting that webinar series that's on the CDMRP website that I had mentioned. This gives some additional information on just the overall CDMRP review process, things that are common across all programs. But there are also some videos within this series that might be of interest to you, such as there's one on team science funding opportunities, which might be helpful if you're applying to something like the Focused Program Award. So I encourage you to take a look at those, and they'll give you a little bit more detail on some of those things than what I was able to cover today. All right, so that includes everything that I had on the slide deck. I am happy to take any questions that you all might have.
I'm not seeing any come through, but I'm happy to collect questions and pass them along, and you shared information if anything else comes up. So this webinar was recorded and will be posted on our website. And I just want to take the time and thank you again, Catherine, for going through all of this. This is great information for our researchers, and thank everybody for attending and being interested in this program.
All right, thanks so much, Chelsea. Yes, if any questions come up as you all are thinking about this later on, please just send them along to the foundation, and they'll make sure to get in touch with me, and you'll get an answer. And then you can also reach out just generally through the CDMRP website or through eBRAP too. Those will work as well. So it was very nice getting the chance to talk to all of you today. Thank you so much.
Thank you for all of that great information, and we hope to chat again soon.
Yes. Have a good rest of the day.
Thanks. Bye-bye, everybody.